Hey everyone, Ben the Bar Guy back with another video to help you make better drinks. And today we're going over the cocktail spec board. That's the test that I give all of my incoming bartenders to make sure that they understand their cocktail roots. From these root cocktail recipes, you can make hundreds of drinks easily and simply just by making simple substitutions, because you'll understand what balances what. So if you think that sounds good, you want to look cool to your friends, you want to look good at your bar, stick with me. Grab yourself a pen and a cocktail. Let's make better drinks. All right, everybody, Ben the Bar Guy back with another video to help you make better drinks. So today we're going over the cocktail spec board. What is the cocktail spec board? Well, essentially, it is a series of root specs or styles of cocktail that then get measured out in particular ways consistently over time. And if you remember these root specs or these root recipes, if I say spec, I always mean recipe. If you remember these root specs, you will be able to make hundreds of different drinks very easily all the time just by making simple substitutions that make sense. I give this as a test to all my bartenders when they're going through training, expanding their drink wisdom, their drink recipe knowledge and repertoire, so that you can watch this video again and go through it and try and answer before I write down the answer later. On the top, I have the cocktail style, and I have written in all the drinks we're gonna go over today. We have the Gimlet, the Daiquri, the Rickey, the Collins, and the Bucks. We have the sours, non-traditional sours, French 75s, 95 and 125. Then we have stirred drinks, okay? We have the Martini, Martinez, and gin and it. We have the Manhattan Negroni, Old Pal, Boulevardier, and Old Fashioned. We're gonna go through all those recipes, and if you know those recipes, you're gonna be in great shape for knowing a bunch of other drinks. This system came from very smart people who worked in New York City under Sash Petrosky, my mentor. And what they would do is they would taste often and throw a lot of drinks away in order to find out what balance is. And they tested it endlessly until they figured out exactly how to balance a certain amount of citrus and give a spec, a recipe, to equal somewhere between 3 and 4 ounces of total volume before you started shaking, which means you can have consistent glassware, okay, at your bar. So it's very important that we measure the same way all the time. And then you'll find that their recipes became easy to learn, right? Because they all had the same base spec. So let's get started, all right? Going across, we have, if the cocktail requires it, citrus, then there's sugar, and that's our weak portion, okay? That's important. Those always have to be balanced. Going across, we have modifiers. The modifiers are anything like vermouth or Amaros, something that has booze in it, but isn't necessarily above 80 proof like a liquor. So basically anything that we don't consider hard booze, okay, is a modifier. Then we have your liquor. You have your soda, whether it needs it or not. We have egg, yes or no, and we have bitters, okay? I want you guys to be able to stop the video and guess as you're going along. We have the Gimlet, and the Gimlet is a shaken up drink, okay? It's 3.5 to 3.75 ounces, depending on how it's made. In our case, 3.75. It's gonna start with 1 ounce of lime, okay? Now that 1 ounce of lime, we always scant, all right? So when I say 1 ounce of lime, I'm gonna put a little down arrow here. 1 ounce of lime juice in a Gimlet is always balanced by just being somewhere between 7/8 and 15/16 of an inch less of an ounce, less than 1 ounce, okay? Then your sugar for this drink is 0.75 ounces of simple syrup, 50-50, okay? Now what we're gonna find when this is measured together, lime and simple syrup, it will always be the same. It's gonna be scant 1 ounce, as we call it, with 3/4 simple syrup. Really straightforward, okay? I'm gonna put SS for simple syrup, okay? Okay? There is no modifier in a Gimlet. It's gin, okay? It doesn't get soda, egg, and most of the time bitters. There's some variations that do, okay? But not in this case. And this is a Gimlet. Now, I will tell you that some of these classic recipes, someone might comment in the section below saying that's not the real Gimlet spec. They would be correct, and we don't always do original cocktails. We do cocktails for balance here, so we do stick to the original recipes whenever we can. But if the recipes have changed over time and people have become accustomed to a different recipe, oftentimes we will move that direction. We'll get into that conversation with the Ricky too here in a minute. But the Gimlet probably would have been made originally with lime cordial, which would have been eventually came to be something that we mostly know now as Rose's lime cordial or syrup. Okay, Rose's lime. Now, I do not like it. I don't think most people do, to be honest with you at this point. But Rose's lime would have been an example of a lime cordial. So what we do now to mimic that is actually use fresh lime juice and 3/4 simple. So I'm giving you basically the modernized spec of making a quick cordial with lime juice and simple syrup. You'll see it creates a consistency across the board with any drink that has lime and simple syrup, which is the key. So now we're gonna move on to the Daiquri. I have a video, the Daiquri video. I will link it up here so that you guys can click on it. How to Daiquri. Daiquiris are great. That shows you how to make this drink. But the spec is gonna be similar, okay? We again have a scant, 1 ounce, lime, okay? Looks familiar. 0.75 ounce simple syrup, okay? Looks familiar. Oh, that's interesting. So every time we make a Gimlet, which means gin, the lime and the simple will be measured the same. Every time we make a Daiquri, which as you'll see is made with rum, it's gonna be measured the same way. Oh, interesting. What if I add mint to that? Same way. What if I add mint to the Daiquri? Same way. That's how it's gonna go across the board. Once you understand that this is what balances your weak portion, stick with it. Don't change it. You don't need to necessarily, okay? So now we have 2 ounces of rum. Okay, 2 rum, no soda, no egg, no bitters, and the drink is gonna be served up just like the Gimlet, okay? So now we have something that we got down here. Oh, that's interesting. Every time lime is paired with sugar, scant 1 ounce lime, 3/4 simple. All right, well what if it's a sour? A sour just means lemon juice instead of lime in a shaken up drink, all right? So in this case, we're gonna put 0.75 ounces lemon, okay? And the non-traditional sour, the difference between the traditional sour and the non-traditional is simply the egg white, okay? So I'm gonna come over here. This gets egg and this doesn't, okay? Now, this weak portion here of 3/4 lemon juice, how does that get balanced with sugar in a sour? Well, in our case, it's gonna be exactly the same as the lime juice. It's 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup, okay? Now your liquor could be anything. I've left it kind of broad, but let's just say it's a whiskey sour. We would use bourbon, and it would always be 2 ounces, okay? Have you noticed everything's 2 ounces, 2 ounces, 2 ounces for liquor? Just keep that in mind. There is no soda, and in this case, it would get some bitters for the egg white, and we'll say no bitters for the non-traditional sour. So essentially, the only difference between a non-traditional sour and a Gimlet is the lime and the lemon. But the lemon gets measured in the same proportion to simple syrup. And the lime juice gets measured at a scant 1 ounce to 3/4 simple syrup. All right, well, what if we do a soda drink, right? We have the Ricky, the Collins, and the Bucks, okay? Well, let's start with the Collins. The Collins is just the lemon version of a Ricky, which is really just the soda version of a Gimlet, okay? Now, big caveat. I live in Washington, D.C., the proud inventors of the Ricky. There'll be a video eventually on the Ricky for sure that I'll do, because DC's a proud, proud, proud inventor of the Ricky. However, the Ricky has no sugar the way it's classically made. It's essentially lime juice, a little bit of soda, you leave the lime wheel inside the drink, and you add gin. What ended up happening when people didn't understand that lime cordial wasn't lime juice, and they stopped using fresh lime juice right around World War II, people started using Rose's lime juice in their Rickeys, okay? Rose's lime juice is sweet, so the Ricky became sweetened against its traditional spec after World War II. I'm sure things got a little bit sweeter as time went on for our palates, okay? So just keep that in mind. The Ricky, sweet Ricky. Let me just put it in now so I don't get in trouble. It's got lime and simple syrup. So you stop the video if you think you can tell me lime, simple syrup so far. What do you think the spec is? Scant 1 ounce lime, just like the Gimlet and the Daiquri. 3/4 of an ounce of simple syrup, okay? So we're seeing it, a consistency across the board. Keep that going. Ricky is also gin, just like the Gimlet, okay? There's no modifiers, okay? Soda, check yes. How much? I think 1.5 to 1.75 ounces of soda is all you need inside of a Ricky. But it also depends on how much you shake. So I like to get them a little bit cold, add about 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce of water. Then we add 1.75 of soda for the bubbles. You really need that bubble effect, so don't shake too much on your Rickeys. Now what's a Collins? Is a Collins the same as a Ricky? No, what's the difference? Well, it's got lemon juice instead of lime juice. Okay, so if we know that, stop the video if you can tell me, based on what we already know, how much simple and lemon are gonna go in this drink. 0.75 ounces lemon, okay? 0.75 ounces simple syrup, all right? Okay, Collins also 2 ounces of booze. It probably was whiskey originally, but we'll say gin now, because that's what most people assume a Collins will be if you order a Collins now. So 2 ounces of gin again. Soda, you bet, 1.75. No egg, no bitters. Now you have a Collins, okay? So you can start to see things look the same. Now I threw in a little curveball for you. Bucks. Bucks are an important category of ginger syrup drinks, ginger drinks, okay? A lot of them would have used a ginger beer back in the day. Now the way we balance ours, our ginger syrup, which you can get at Reliable Tavern if you like, is with a 1/2 ounce citrus every time. It could be lemon or lime. So I'm just gonna put a 1/2 ounce citrus, okay? It could be lemon or lime depending on the drink, okay? And then 0.75 ounces of ginger syrup, okay? That's how we balance a buck here with our particular ginger spec recipe. And eventually we'll have a video up, but essentially that is 24 ounces of sugar going into a liter, 33.8 ounces of ginger juice. So it's a little less sweet than simple syrup by brick scale. And this is how we find it balances. So I threw that in there just so if you ever get our ginger syrup, you would know what to do with it. 0.5 ounces citrus, 0.75 ginger syrup, then 2 ounces booze. Again, I'm just gonna leave it blank because bucks can have a million different booze inside it. And now we have our spec for the buck. Let's move on to a different style drink that we like to have on our menu here at Reliable. It's the sparkling cocktail. The French 75s all have the same spec for the most part, okay? You're gonna start with 0.75 lemon, okay? Now how do we balance lemon? You should know this already, right? 0.75 lemon is balanced by how much sugar? 0.75, that's right. I knew you'd get it. All right, but here's where it gets a little different. Because we're adding sparkling wine, you're actually gonna cut down on your booze. Why? We're not trying to hurt people here, so you don't wanna make big booming drinks, okay? So we're gonna cut down on the booze and we're gonna go to 1.5, all right? Now you're gonna see sometimes us cutting drinks down like that when we're adding booze of another sort, okay? It's very important that we don't get people too drunk at your bar. So when we're adding booze of another sort, whether it's sparkling wine or maybe Cointreau as the sweetener and a sidecar or something, you'll see that our spec drops down the liquor a little bit. But generally it's 2 ounces. You've seen 2 ounces in every drink up till now, okay? 1.5 though for the French 75. 3/4, 1.5 ounce. In this case, gin. Instead of soda, we're gonna add 1.5 ounces of sparkling wine. You may go a little bit higher. We use very big glasses so that we can do that. We do shake the non-bubbly portion, and by the way, that goes for Rickeys, Collinses, and Bucks. You shake things without bubbles. You don't shake bubbles. It'll explode in you in the tin, so it's a hint for any drink. But you do want to get things cold, so shake the French 75, get a nice ounce of water into it, then a nice big champagne glass, not little flutes, a big guy, it's wide, coupe, okay? And you're gonna shake about an ounce of water into it and add 1.5 ounces of sparkling wine. And there's no bitters. Now what's the French 95? It's the same drink, okay? Same spec, except this is bourbon, all right? Same across the board. Now the 125 is cognac, okay? Same spec though. Now we're gonna go on to stirred drinks. All of these drinks tended to be between 3.5 and 4 ounce specs. They're a little bit bigger than your stirred drink. Why? Well, your stirred drinks are boozy. Most of these drinks here are gonna be 3 ounces with the exception of the old fashioned, and we'll get to that in a moment. The martini spec we like to keep in the original dry variation, which today might seem wet to people. The martini would have been made mostly with vermouth. When it became popular, it would have probably been 50-50 or even more vermouth than gin. When they started to dry it out, they went 2 parts booze to 1 part vermouth. We're gonna have 1 ounce dry vermouth, 2 ounces gin, and we like to add orange bitters. The early martinis would have used orange bitters. 3 ounces total in your stir drinks is pretty common, so keep that spec in mind. One thing we're gonna mention the gin in it and the Martinez here. I know this is hard to read, but the Martinez uses about 1/4 ounce of maraschino liqueur. We use Luxardo. It's a drier version of maraschino, so you can fluctuate that a little bit based on the maraschino liqueur you have specifically. But we use Luxardo. It's 0.25 maraschino to 0.75 ounces of sweet vermouth, okay? Again, 2 ounces of gin, orange bitters again. Okay, that's the Martinez. The Martinez is a fantastic drink with a little maraschino and sweet vermouth instead of dry. Okay, gin and it. Gin and it is just the 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, okay, and 2 ounces gin. Why is it called the gin and it? Well, the it was short for Italian vermouth. And in the old days, all Italian vermouths tended to be sweet. So in the cocktail world, they just called it Italian if it was sweet vermouth. And then dry tended to be French, so they just called all dry vermouths French vermouth. But it's just the sweet vermouth version of a martini. You see how many drinks we're learning here today? All very similar, all the same specs. You're just substituting out sweet vermouth for dry, maybe adding a touch of maraschino and dumbing down the amount of sweet vermouth so that it equals 1 ounce on this side, and then always 2 ounces of booze. Manhattan. Well, Manhattan changes the booze on a martini, but the spec is largely, it's the same amount, right? You're gonna use 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, just like in the gin and it, and 2 ounces of rye whiskey. Bitters, absolutely. I'm gonna shorten this to Ango, short for Angostura. Now we're gonna move on to the Negroni. And what you're gonna find is, again, 3 ounces total, but the spec changes because it's a unique spec. The Negroni was named after a man named Count Negroni. Probably was a cowboy out west in the American West. And when he came back to Italy, he had lots of great stories about his adventures out west. They liked him, so they named a cocktail at his favorite bar after him. Okay, the Negroni is 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, 1 ounce of Campari. Now, Campari is a bitter liqueur, bright red, makes the drink very pretty, but it also has a bite to it, something you get used to over time. I always say your worst Negroni is your first Negroni. And then we have 1 ounce of gin. So 1, 1, 1, what do you got? 3. Again, 3 ounces. Now this wouldn't get any bitters because the Campari takes care of it, but I would definitely add a little bit of an orange peel. I think the orange peel is essential in that drink. Now you can always orange peel a Manhattan instead of cherry, but typically it's a cherry, okay? And you can always, as far as the martini goes, you're gonna ask for olives or a twist. The Martinez, I would put a lemon twist on that. The same with the gin in it, although you could do an orange twist as well. Now this little spec, if you subbed out 1 ounce of rye, you would have the old pal. The base spec stays the same. 1 ounce sweet vermouth, 1 ounce Campari, 1 ounce rye, the old pal. There is two different variations of the Old Pal. We call it the My Old Pal and the Old Pal. The My Old Pal is not dry, which means the sweet vermouth version, but the Old Pal has the dry vermouth. If you want to do the Old Pal, you can use 1 ounce dry vermouth instead of sweet. If you want to do the My Old Pal, sweet vermouth. Both are delicious. Hey, a little trick too. Just so you know, when someone says something is perfect, that means a split of sweet vermouth and dry. I like that. Certain sweet vermouths and dry vermouths go together. Maybe they're made from the same company. It's delicious. I highly recommend perfect drinks more often, but when people say perfect, that's what they mean, okay? Little hint. So you could also make that Old Pal perfect and split the dry and the sweet half ounce, and now you have a perfect Old Pal, right? So, again, you're just learning drinks now, right? You're learning the roots, and now you're just piling on, okay? Boulevardier, slightly different spec, all right? They found that the bourbon in a Boulevardier is a little sweet. So if it's just 1-1-1 like the other specs, you end up getting a little bit of a sweet cocktail. So I recommend in a Boulevardier to dumb down the sweet vermouth in the Campari. So we're gonna go to 0.75 sweet vermouth, 0.75 Campari, okay? And then 1.5 ounces of bourbon. All right, and that just cuts down the sweetness. The bourbon's a little bit sweeter. So we often talk about Boulevardier specs. When we substitute something out that's sweet, like let's say cognac. Let's say we wanted to use cognac in the Boulevardier. Well, that 1.5 ounces of cognac might make more sense than 1 ounce because it's gonna lower the sweetness level. And cognac's a little bit sweeter than say spicy rye or dry gin, okay? Now we're to the old fashioned. Now we have a video right up here and also in the description about the old fashioned how-to. And the first thing you're gonna notice is it doesn't have 3 ounces of booze. And that's because there's no modifier, okay? It's just 2 ounces of, in our case, bourbon. If you wanted to use rye, that's perfectly fine. But we use bourbon here at Reliable. And 2 ounces of bourbon with just a touch of Ango, and then sugar at a scant 2 ounces of simple syrup. Or I would recommend a sugar cube or 2 mashed up with a splash of soda if you want to do it the original way. I think simple syrup is just easier to incorporate the sugar. You get a more consistent product. Of course, the orange peel, always great on an old fashioned. You could also lemon peel. I like to do both, orange and lemon. You'll see in the video. That's in honor of Harry Craddock and the Savoy Old Fashioned, the Savoy Cocktail Book Old Fashioned, which is also linked in the description. You want a great resource for great cocktails from back in the day, 1930s, 1920s cocktail list. It's a great compendium. So that's our board. I would have had all of the bartenders go through that one by one. And if they understood these specs, I knew that we could move on to the next level and start building rounds, which we'll get to eventually. But I hope this helps you guys understand recipes. And if you guys dig it, please like and subscribe and tell me what you think in the comments. And I appreciate it, guys, as always. To better drinks. Hey guys, before you go, I would be remiss if I didn't mention my employer, where I'm the general manager, Reliable Tavern in Petworth, Washington, D.C., where we do all these videos and trainings for bartenders just like the ones we're doing on these YouTube videos. And you also can get our products on DC to Go, a local company that also is great. It doesn't take too much for us to get delivered items to you, mostly cocktails to go. And so if you guys want to reach out and order, I will put the links to the website and a link to DC to Go, where you guys can get our stuff in the DC area. We've always believed at Reliable Tavern that a great tavern should be commonplace, not hard to find. If you guys have time or if you're in the area, come check us out at Reliable Tavern. Thank you guys for watching the video, and like always, to better drinks. See you guys.